The last episode of 2022 and the last time I'm thanking our sponsor for 2022, which is Zai, boldly transforming the future of financial services with a suite of embedded products and services, enabling businesses to manage multiple payment workflows and move funds with ease. I want to thank the team at Zai, in particular Andrea Linehan, who's been magnificent to work with, along with her team for the last 14 months. They've helped us grow the show incredibly. So thank you very, very much. You can find Zai at hellozai.com. There's a wonderful saying that's attributed to many people, many minds, including Buddha, Emerson, Frank Outlaw, and it's recounted within our guest's earlier book, The Habit Factor, which we covered many, many years ago, back when the show was but an embryo. The quote goes as follows: "Watch your thoughts, for they become your words. Watch your words, for they become your actions. Watch your actions, for they become your habits. Watch your habits, for they become your character. Watch your character, for it becomes your destiny." In his latest book that has just come out, he dares to enter the realm of thought and entertain the bizarre concept that our primary means of thinking, cognitive function, and analysis is story. It's a pleasure to welcome back, after many years, the author of these two books behind me, The Pressure Paradox and The Habit Factor, and his latest in the trilogy that brings them all together, Everything is a Friggin' Story. Martin Grunburg, welcome back, sir.
Thank you, Aidan, and I love the way you teed that up. It's a beautiful quote, and it's so good to be here with you again. Yeah, when you think about that quote, this idea that what our thoughts become our words become our actions become our habits, and then our habits become our character. It brings me back. I know we're here to talk about the new book, but that is the essence of the habit factor. And that's when I first wrote about it in 2010. Habit is a very popular topic these days. Back then, not so much. And it's because there was a predominantly negative connotation. And that was a lot of my mission, to change that. So yeah, habit is a means. Covey used to talk about means and ends, late great Stephen Covey, means and ends. Well, what he never said, but I'm sure he implied, is ends are goals. Habit is a means to two ends: our achievements and our accomplishments, right? And our character. Habit is responsible for who we become and what we achieve. It's pretty daunting if you think about it that way, but that's how significant habit is.
One of my kind of readings that I sneak in wherever I can is Joe Dispenza, the Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he talks about this idea that over time your thoughts become your realities because they become your actions and your habits, but then they become your personal reality, which is your personality. So you actually become what you think. And that realization for me really, really changed my life, that you can affect how you show up in the world by purely changing how you think. And we're so pre-programmed with many negative thoughts from our childhoods, from teachers, from experiences that we have as we grow. But we can change that, and we have agency to change that. And this is what I love about your work. I thought, Martin, this is an innovation bite. It's a short one, and we're going to come back and do a deep dive into your trilogy in the future. But I thought we'd share a diagram that really brings this idea of the book together, so people might go and embark onto the book, and then they can come back and join us when we come back in a few months' time.
This is an ecosystem. There are three major and critical components, and it begins at the heart of this ecosystem is story. Now, it's the first behavior model ever to represent our thinking in terms of story, which is really significant. What you'll see is a membrane around this story is our feelings and emotions. So if I start going into a thought, And that's another key idea, real quick, is that we don't think like we think we think. We don't think in simple sentences. We think in terms of complex stories or even scripts. So at the heart of this ecosystem is story. If you dwell on a sad story, how are you going to feel, Aidan?
It's going to make me sad, melancholic, probably
Yeah.
over
Right.
empathetic.
Your action, you may begin to cry. We can see this ecosystem in real time, and we all live in it. I live in it. You live in it, and so our thinking in terms of story most of the time influences how we feel, changes how we behave. If we behave in a bizarre way, if I punch a wall, that's going to change how I feel again, and that's going to change and influence the environment. Now, you were just talking about, I think it was Dispenza. The truth of the matter is it's both. It's not that we can have total agency and influence our environment. It's not an either or, it's both. If a comet strikes right now, I had no influence. There are acts of God. So there are bad things that happen and good things all the time. And we always retain the ability of how we respond. And that begins with the stories we tell ourselves. Those set up the parameters. So in this new book, the idea is our thinking, our stories influence the environment ultimately, and in some cases the environment, it changes how we feel. If the stock market goes down, how are you going to feel?
Well, if I'm invested, not so good, man.
That's right. And then maybe your actions are gonna change. And so you're gonna sell some stocks, maybe, which may not be the best idea. The point is, it's a perpetual, this is why we call it an ecosystem. It just goes back and forth. Now behavior models since the 50s, and there are some prevalent ones, they represent behavior in a almost a business diagram. Like I feel this way, and then I'm gonna take an action, and but it's not a business diagram. It's our if I say something, people say all the time, "Wow, that really resonated with me," right? The language we use is fascinating because it gives us clues, and so we walk into a room and we go, I dig the vibe in here. I love Aidan's vibe. It's vibrational. So Nikola Tesla, many moons ago, said and it's on the cover of the Pressure Paradox. Actually, you want to find the secrets of the universe. Think in terms of frequency, energy, and vibration. So that's the ecosystem in action, and it's really critical for us to understand our behaviors are framed by our habits. You want to talk about the new year. Our habits are framed by two major components: our thinking, predominantly in terms of story, and our environment, which is something that influences us and we can influence.
It really makes sense that you change your internal dialogue or your internal story, the dialogue with yourself, then you change how you show up in the world. And even to the fact, I remember being very honest here when my kids were born, and when you're like the guy who takes out the bins and you're not that useful and badly makes the bottles or whatever. But I remember getting down on myself and kind of going, oh, life sucks, all I do is clean the kitchen and do these jobs and work all day, and as a result, as you said, that reflects somehow in your environment. Maybe you'll have more kind of negative thoughts as a result, or you'll see the world as a more negative place, and then you change that story, and your life, you start to see it manifest in reality, and then therefore in your personality.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So the struggle I had is I knew after writing The Habit Factor, which is the middle concentric circle, and then the pressure paradox, which is the environment, the outer concentric circle, I knew I had to write about thinking. But what I didn't want to do, Aidan, was try to write another As a Man Thinketh. That's a brilliant book, and there's no reason to do that. As soon as I learned that we think predominantly in terms of story, now I had something. And then the question becomes, if everything, and we'll talk more about this later, but if everything is a story, the real question is, what are the most important stories?
You run workshops. I know that's a huge part of the work you do. Apart from being an author, you have your own podcast. You have the Habit Factor app. I don't know if that's still going, the Habit Factor app. Maybe you'll tell us about all those things. But I'd love for this New Year's episode if you'd share one nugget for our audience, one thing that they can do to tilt the odds in their favor of those New Year's resolutions, that they stick to them.
Thank you for asking. So there's one thing. It's something I've been talking about for a very long time. I think it's incredibly significant. It's to regard habit the same way you regard skills. In other words, if somebody wanted to become a brain surgeon or a mechanic, they would go to work at it. They would practice it. They would have intentional practice. They would set aside time and plan. But when you talk to people about doing that for habit, it's very confusing. So two things. The first thing is, habit is neither good nor bad. It's neutral. It's the force. We can and we should channel the force of habit positively by aligning and crafting habits that fit with our goals. And then we need to, what I keep proposing here is you follow that. The habit loop is very limited. This idea of cue, routine, reward, it's based on the study of rodents. And it's very popularized and it's overpopular. The truth is, we're human. We can choose, right? We can plan and we can reflect. So what I have been teaching, as you said, for a dozen years is this idea of PAR, plan, act, record, reassess, which goes to my earlier statement that habit is, and that's why in that ecosystem, habit and skills are in the same place. Habit and skill are nearly identical. It's mostly semantic. So that's the share. Attack new habit, plan.
You mentioned the echo aspect. My son, I was trying to teach my kid one day about how you have a huge impact on your reality by your thoughts. And I was telling him about karma. And at the time, he was a massive Batman fan. And he said, actually, Dad, that just sounds like echolocation, where what you put out comes back to you. So the way a bat locates itself. And I was
incredible.
Like, brilliant metaphor for a kid. And that's the way he thinks, that, as you said with Tesla, the vibes you put out are then reflected back to you. And that's how you create your reality. And I thought it was just perfect for what you were saying.
I love it. I'm going to have to use that in the next presentation. Yeah, echolocation. The secrets of the universe are right in front of us. It's frequent energy, frequency, and vibration. Energy, frequency, and vibration. And that's what our thoughts vibrate, influence our emotions. Our emotions vibrate, influence our actions. They affect our thought, our feelings again, which can affect our environment. And then it's the other way around. If a comet strikes, I'm going to be terrified. I'm going to start running, and then I may hide under a desk and think the world's ending, which is a story. So it works both ways, and it's perpetual.
Everythingastory.com is the website for this book, but where would people find you mostly?
Yeah, the habitfactor.com is probably the best location.
Author of The Pressure Paradox, The Habit Factor, and now Everything a Story, Martin Grunburg, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, sir. It was an honor and a privilege, and I look forward to our next chat.
I said it before the show, I'll say it after the show. Thank you to Zai for helping us grow this show for the last 14 months. It's been a pleasure to work with you, Andrea, and your team. You can find Zai at hellozai.com. Happy New Year.